what you have learned, if nothing else, is that, and you probably knew that, or some of you that watch me, but there's going to be those of you that still believe that government is this benevolent institution that needs to be used for good, which is kind of oxymoronic, but that's what a lot of folks believe, unfortunately. And I think those that aren't leftists have given, unfortunately, a lot of leftists the benefit of the doubt way too often, and not understanding that they don't give a crap. And you heard me talk about this many, many times. They don't give a crap about their own hypocrisy, and they certainly don't give a crap about contradicting themselves. You have to understand, I know it's hard to realize that, right? Because you want to give people the benefit of the doubt, because you look at it like, all right, well, you yourself are moral, you have a set of standards, you abide or uphold these sort of, let's say, universal truths. But when you're dealing with an enemy or they don't even care about that. All they care about is winning. You can make the grave, and I mean literally grave mistake. And what y'all learned out of these recent Supreme Court cases, there was another one that happened, Supreme Court rulings. You're seeing how really a lot of these guys tell on themselves. It's not just about with the whole Roe v. Wade overturning. You have to understand what that means, or what that meant, and how they reacted, right? Where they have absolutely no problem if the Supreme Court is ruling in their, that's what Roe was initially. If the Supreme Court rules on their behalf, it's perfectly fine. It's a legitimate institution for them. It's great if it means that they get to do what they want to do, especially if it means suppressing their ideological enemies. However, in the event that that same institution does the opposite, and they take a L, well, then that institution is illegitimate. That institution needs to be undermined. There needs to be a fundamental change. We need to bring all of this. And it has nothing to do with them caring about liberty. They don't care about decentralization. They don't care about anything. They just want to be able to implement or have an institution that gives them the greatest set of power that they possibly could obtain and rule. That's what they're about. They're about power and ruling over their ideological enemies, or as many of them as they possibly can. So you may have heard this recent EPA, which it's another real, ironically enough, another form of decentralization, because it talks about like the EPA and this federal institution, and the fact that it does not have the power to regulate in all these different areas that it does. That's basically what what this recent ruling, which came out this morning, if I'm not mistaken, said. An AOC, goofy chick. No, I'm not saying that's because I want to date her. She says catastrophic, a filibuster carve out is not enough. We need to reform or do away with the whole thing for the sake of the planet. And of course, she's referring to the fact that there's this rule that an institution that she had no problem assuming, if it did what it is that she wanted it to do, now she's trying to undermine it. And think about what they're getting mad at. I think that's the important part. Think about what they're getting mad at. They're not getting mad because there's decentralization effort. They're getting mad at the opposite. They're getting mad because there's this centralized form of power, like what the federal government is. And you guys know I'm an advocate of it being completely eliminated, the federal government, that is. But my reasons are for decentralization efforts and liberty efforts. I understand that the Fed is very difficult, more difficult for someone in Texas to combat the federal government as opposed to combating, let's say, the government of Texas. So what it does is it limits the power of those people. It's not to say that a geographical area may be more or less authoritarian. Let's say that. What it means is that at least we know if, let's say, the federal government isn't operating in how it operates right now, and it operates, let's say, either being completely eliminated or severely minimized, then what you ensure is that there's not this institution that is big enough and powerful enough to rule over a geographical area with 300 something million plus, 330 million, like 230 million, some big massive number. And that is the greatest threat to the leftists, which is what you've seen out of these reactions, is that they fear that their power is limited. Okay, they fear that there will be a world in which they cannot depend on the federal government to rule over so many big areas. This is why they're the same people that advocate, what they advocate about elimination of, let's say, the Electoral College. It's not for obviously not for decentralization efforts. It's for the complete opposite. They would 100% rather these urban crap hole cities be able to rule over the entire geographical area. That's what they would prefer. They are about winning. And this is why I pointed out their hypocrisy doesn't really do you much good. You just have to act accordingly. You have to understand your enemy, your ideological enemy, the people that consider you an ideological enemy, whether you consider them one or not, are dirty, grimy, low-blowing scums. Like, that's just how they are. They're scum of the earth, and they're dirty, man. They're dirty, and you can see how they act when they don't get their way. So I guess the thing to learn from this is that when you keep pushing for decentralization, whether you know it or not, you are limiting and severely minimizing their power. Really, it's not even just about their power. It's about the power in general. You're minimizing the influence, which is what is necessary and what is needed if we're going to ever see liberty or a net gain in liberty in our lifetimes. Is that you cannot have, or the fact that we have a bunch of idiots in Washington, a handful of idiots in Washington that sit up there and make rules that have to apply for this massive block of people, this massive geographical area, and within it there's so many cultural differences, man. It just makes no sense. And they know that. They themselves know that. But they need the power. That's what they've operated on. That perceived legitimacy and that power, they get off on that stuff. The minute they see that's threatened, though, you see how they act. That's why you act accordingly. You just listened to a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake, which is live throughout the week at 12 p.m. Central on youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. Be sure to check out my website, ericdjuly.com, so you can stay up to date with everything it is that I'm doing. You can also become a member and get access to a bunch of cool perks and exclusive content, which includes a social media hub where you can interact with myself and other members. It even has an app that you can get, which is now live in the Google and Apple stores.